Seguimos diretamente para a conversa a partir do livro A Arte de Colecionar Moscas, com o autor Fredrik Sjöberg, moderação de Marques e também Ricardo Araújo Pereira.
Boa tarde a todos. Fredrik. Thank you.
Viva,
Ora,
boa tarde.
Boa tarde a todos. É um gosto estar neste festival, nesta primeira edição deste festival. É um gosto ter-vos aqui e quero dar-vos as boas-vindas ao Oeiras Valley Science Festival. E, em particular, é um gosto estar nesta sessão onde o rigor científico, se vier a haver algum, se cruzará ou talvez se confunda com o humor, com a literatura e com a arte de prestar atenção. Temos dois autores singulares nesta mesa, de universos aparentemente distantes, um humorista e um entomologista, um especialista no estudo de insetos. Apesar da distância entre as duas ocupações, têm ambos uma mesma inclinação, olham para o mundo com uma curiosidade obstinada e procuram, no detalhe quase invisível, aquilo que ainda não tínhamos visto ou que nos tinha escapado por completo. Estamos aqui por causa de um livro, mostro-vos o livro, este livro em particular, o livro de Fredrik Sjöberg, edição Ziggurat, que obteve um enorme sucesso internacional, já foi publicado em inúmeros países e que espero, enquanto editor, que depois desta sessão também desperte o vosso entusiasmo, o vosso interesse, pelo menos, e que fiquem todos com vontade de o ler. Tal como anunciado, esta conversa vai decorrer em inglês, em honra do nosso convidado, que é sueco. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Fredrik Sjöberg. Your name will be very badly treated here.
Say after me, please. Fredrik Sjöberg.
Okay. It's easy.
It's the same all over the world.
Well, Fredrik Sjöberg, an entomologist, a writer, and I would say a master of literary digression with this delightful book. And Ricardo Araújo Pereira, Portugal's most famous humorist, it's not necessary to say it, who also happens to be one of Fredrik's most dedicated readers in Portugal. This may look like a literary encounter in a certain way, and it is in a certain way, but it's also a celebration of scientific curiosity, eccentric obsessions, collecting, and the gentle art of paying attention to what most people forget or ignore. I'll be moderating this conversation, but trying not to get too much in the way. So Ricardo and Fredrik will talk between them. But in a moment, I'll ask Ricardo what he finds so special about this book. But first, Fredrik, since you've come such a long way, are you secretly hoping to spot the fruit fly you haven't already trapped and named in your...
When I'm here?
No.
You mean that my dream is to get a fly named after myself? Yes, of course.
Maybe.
Of course it is. Yes.
Maybe
yes.
you can.
And
you can find it in Portugal. You have to
no,
stay
but
more.
You know, I only collect hoverflies only on this little island where I live.
Okay.
This book is actually a book about limitations, how to limit yourself in order not to go crazy.
The world is too
So
big.
I never collect insects on the mainland. And the island is 15 square kilometers.
And it's enough for you.
That's enough.
The world is too big.
Yes. But my dream is, of course, to find a hoverfly out there that is new to science, and then it can be named after me. I believe you have insects named after you already, but I have not. And that would be something. Yes.
Ricardo, you've spoken publicly about this book several times in the podcast, everywhere. What would you say to convince this audience they really must read it?
Yes. Well, hi. Good afternoon. I'm going to speak in English.
It's embarrassing.
There's English-speaking people looking at me, so every mistake I make will be signaled. So I'm sorry in advance. Yes, I was. When I don't remember how I first got my hands on this book, but I was immediately fascinated by it. I spoke to all my friends that own publishing houses like Carlos about this book. You have to read this book. This is a wonderful book. They all ignored me. And then one day, Carlos came back from Spain and said, I found a wonderful book in a bookshop, in a Spanish bookshop. It's about flies. Go figure. And I said, well, are you kidding? That's the book I've been telling you about for years. So I hope I do a better job today before you. The first thing that strikes me about the book is that it is really funny. It is a really, as you can imagine, that tells me something. That resonates with me. And I was investigating it. I saw that the book, despite being a book about science, about entomology, had won a humor award, literary award, which wasn't surprising for me. It is, let me tell you, so the book is called, in Portuguese it's Arte de Colecionar Moscas. The English version I got first, it was called The Fly Trap, so a armadilha para moscas. The book is about an obsession, really. So the author is obsessed about, he's an entomologist, which means he studies insects. But the field of study is so broad that he has to shorten it, maybe, reduce it to flies, and not only flies, but hoverflies, which means we call them moscas das flores, so flies of flower flies. So that's it. The first thing that is funny is that obsessions are funny, especially if they are unlikely obsessions, and especially if they are about very small things. Mr. Sjöberg is, throughout the book, aware that his obsession has ridiculous aspects. All the time I was reading a book, I was talking to my wife very excitingly about, he's now describing the little nails that he uses to stick the flies into the collection. And it's fascinating. I don't see the crowd still agreeing with me, but let me.
The audience is following you.
Yeah. Okay.
They know everything about these things.
Yeah. So it's really some of the funniest moments. I have to say first that the book is about an obsession. It's about the infinitely small. It's about loneliness. It's about silence. It's about living in an island. It's about attention. It's about patience. It's about collecting, about persistence, about beauty, about slowness, and finally, about entomology. And it's, I'll just wrap up because I have lots more to say, but so there are some of the funniest aspects of the book have to do with a person that's a fly collector by, it's his job, it's his profession, and the clash that it makes with regular people like us. So, for instance, I don't know if you know what hoverflies are, moscas das flores. Hoverflies are a very specific kind of fly that nature gave the capability of disguising as bees. They look like a bee. They are. Yeah. If you don't pay enough attention, you think it's a bee. So it's a camouflage to defend themselves from predators. Predators look at them and think, oh, this stings. And it doesn't, because they are flies. So when Mr. Sjöberg is capturing his flies and putting them in a jar, sometimes regular people go by and say, what are you doing? And he says, these are flies. And people say, no, they're not, they're bees. And they get angry to the point of violence. It's one of the wonderful things about collecting these flies. So the book is a lot of things. The book is also a biography of Renee Malz, a French-named Swedish entomologist that's more or less like a founding father of modern entomology, maybe, and who invented the fly trap. As we don't know, as we go into the book, that first we are very interested in flies, and that we are very interested in the biography of Renee Malz. We have no idea before reading the book, but we are. Let me just end with an example of what I mean by this is a wonderfully funny book. So it's in the second chapter, and then we'll speak more. It's in the second chapter when Mr. Sjöberg is telling us about a Finnish scientist named Olavi Sotavalta. He says, in particular, he occupied himself with the biting midges. Biting midges, we say in Portuguese, mosquito pólvora. So what he studied was mosquito pólvora, whose interest included an investigation of insect wing frequencies. In particular, he occupied himself with biting midges, which managed to reach an astonishing frequency of 1,046 wing beats per second. Sophisticated instruments in his laboratory allowed him to measure exactly and unambiguously, but just as important for Sotavalta's research was his wonderful musicality and the fact that he had perfect pitch. So he had a ouvido absoluto, I think that's what we call it in Portuguese. He could determine the frequency in which the mosquitoes beat their wings simply by listening to the hum. And the foundation of his renown was laid when, in a famous experiment, he managed to trim the wings of a midge in order to increase the frequency beyond the limits of what seemed possible. He warmed up the midge's tiny body several degrees above normal and cut its wings with a scalpel to minimize air resistance, whereupon the little beast achieved no less than 2,218 wing beats per second. It was during the war. You see that effect? That's wonderful. The fact that he ends this paragraph with, "It was during the war," makes us immediately imagine a guy that, while the world is coming to an end with bombs and stuff and the Nazi threat, he says, "Yeah, but I'm going to, I want to see if this little beast can fly with..." Okay, thank you.
One of the particularities of the book and of your work is a question of size, of scale. These tiny creatures, we don't pay attention.
No.
Do you think that changing of scale, observing the minuscule, changes the way we understand the world, we understand things?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I've studied insects since I was a little boy as a hobby.
What
And
drove you to insects?
Not even my mother could say. I started when I was maybe 5 years old, and some genetic shit, I think. I was an insect kind of a boy, and I learned all the names. So for me, knowing all the names of the insects, flies and butterflies and beetles is like a language. So I can read the landscape. So of course. Swedish is my first language, English is my third language, but the biodiversity is my second language. And I can read every language, at least where I come from, I can read the landscape as others can read books in French. So of course, knowing all those tiny stuff around us changes the way we perceive the world, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then there's humor, and Ricardo gave us an example. Is it natural
No, it's also genetic.
on you?
I was a very small guy. I had a very odd hobby. It was, as all entomologists know, I realized that very early. It's completely impossible to make an impression on girls with dead insects. So I had to make them laugh, I think. And then also when I wanted to be a writer, like a rock star cruising the world like this, talking to people like you, then I realized that what I knew about no one was interested in. For example, flies. I mean, it's a dozen people in Sweden interested. And then I had to start to tell stories about other things and make people laugh. And I always want my readers to smile and then think, but in that order. And I never write anything for interested readers. I always picture a completely uninterested reader. It comes natural when you deal with flies, I would say. I realize that people have fun when they read my books, and it's mostly a good thing. Not always, but I think so.
Ricardo works with jokes.
Yes, but
And humor. And
yeah.
Fredrik works with insects. And both are, in a certain way, in a certain moment, undervalued as tiny little things that we don't pay much attention. Only pay attention for the moment when
they
a fly.
So you mean
I was
a joke is like a fly?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if they are undervalued for the
yes,
same
yes,
reasons.
Yeah, I follow you. I think it's correct. But on the other hand, life is also a joke, isn't it? So it's studying this kind of tiny things is a way of to stand with it. Because life is, as they sing, life is a piece of shit when you look at it.
Yeah, Monty Python.
In Life of Brian.
Yeah.
So I think it's...
Also, flies are sometimes frequently annoying.
Of
So
course,
jokes.
Of course. Yes.
And Ricardo can talk a little bit about
about
that.
Yes, because so my passion for this book came from several things. The first one is the enthusiasm with which Mr. Sjöberg talks about his job, his profession. As he said, when you talk about flies, you have to seduce your audience because no one is interested in flies, and he does it wonderfully. Let me just to give you a small taste of it. The book starts with Mr. Sjöberg working in a theater. There was a play, and he had a difficult job among others. But I don't know if you have seen the movie Fargo by the Coen brothers. There's one of the assassins, the psychopathic assassins, is a Swedish actor. And that Swedish actor was acting in that play, and he had to urinate on the stage. They started to work out a machine with which he could pretend to be urinating, but when the machine was done, they saw that it wouldn't work because of the mise en scène. And so he said, "Don't worry, I'll urinate on stage every night." And Mr. Sjöberg's job was, among others, to mop the urine from the stage every night. So he concludes the first chapter, saying, "So the study of flies was actually a step up in my life. It was a promotion." The other way that the book seduced me was because of a suspicion that I have had for a long time, that comedians and flies share a lot of characteristics. There's an old story about Charlie Chaplin. He was doing a movie, and there was a fly very annoyingly disturbing, and so he stopped everything and was trying to catch the fly. And at some point, he notices the fly is right in front of him, and he has the fly in sight and a newspaper ready to strike, and then he doesn't do anything. And people said, "Why? Why didn't you kill the fly?" And he said, "It was another fly. It was a different fly." And so what I think is that, well, he didn't do it just because out of a joke. He did it for professional solidarity.
Respect.
Respect.
Yeah.
Because comedians and flies are the same. You see, I'm. Let me see if I can. There's a. What is a fly? Really, there's a poem by Ogden Nash that says, "God in his wisdom made the fly and forgot to tell us why." And we don't understand it, right? We don't understand flies or the reason for their existence. They are useless. They are not admirable like bees and ants who are workers. They are annoying. They are gluttons. Is there a word? Yeah. So gluttons. Thank you, Richard. And they are annoying. They say that they have an insatiable sexual appetite. They are dirty. They are obsessed not only with excrement but with any dead matter. It's associated with death and the devil. You know, etymologically, it seems that the word Beelzebub comes from the Hebrew Lord of the Flies. And still, God gave it a very sophisticated defense system that makes it almost impossible to kill. Who do you think God loves more? Me, that can't escape a punch coming from in front of me, or a fly that can see everywhere, and it's obvious that who God loves more. But one other thing, we give the fly the exact same treatment we give the worst criminals. We electrocute them. So in every restaurant there is like a purple lamp that fries flies, and we have like tennis rackets that are electrified also to fry them. So it's we consider them really, really bad, and yet the fly is inoffensive. So my point is this: who else is annoying, useless, dirty, obsessed with sex and death and excrement, who is a glutton, like Falstaff, for instance, famously is, and Pantagruel, etc. And who has some kind of invulnerability that is given to us by that wonderful shield that the sense of humor is? So the answer is the comedian. It's the comedian. So we are exactly like flies. So that was wonderful for me to discover by reading your book.
Yeah, that's only, it's new for me. I never pictured the flies as jokes or comedians, but of course, since those hoverflies, they are trying to look like wasps and bees and bumblebees, as you said. They always try to seduce someone, and maybe also that's what comedians do. Yeah. So they are very seductive. And they they pretend to be someone else, as most of us do once in a while. So that's also part of my identification with those. I mean, I could have collected some other kind of insects. Now it happened to be hoverflies, and yeah, the rest is history. No one thought this book was possible to sell in more than a couple of hundred copies. So, and no one really, now I'm happy to hear that you really tried to explain the success. Nice try. But I haven't yet heard any really good explanation on why this, about the thing with the book. Because no one can actually say what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
It has been called anything except children's book.
Yeah, okay.
When it first was published, 2004 in Swedish, it was called Popular Science.
Mm-hmm.
I had written popular science books before, and then some other critics said, no, it's a biography. It's about this Renee Malz.
Yeah.
And a third one said, no, it's an autobiography. The writer only talks about himself.
Yeah, it's a memoir.
Yeah, it's a memoir.
Yeah.
When it was published in Germany, it was called a novel. Yeah, fine. Then in Sweden, they had started to call it an essay, which is very fine. In English, they call it creative nonfiction. It was placed for 2 years on the top list in Sweden for poetry. And in the libraries, it's in the shelf for entomology. Spineless animals. So, what is it? For me, it's a memoir. It's mainly about myself. It's about a young man moving to an island, starting collecting flies to breathe some air of his own and to get some space around him, to forget everything that is annoying. Because it's about hunting, you know.
Uh-huh.
You can't run after, they are very fast. You can't run after them, so you have to wait for them, where it's sunny and flowers and so on. So you just stand there for hours. And it's very thrilling, because you know some very rare species that one day might show up. You can wait for years, and you forget everything, except including yourself. So when you come back after a hunting session, you are like a new person. No, not really, but it's very relaxing.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's. I often said it's like drinking alcohol, but it's cheaper, and and the side effects are better, because you forget everything, and it's I give the advice to all my friends that are depressed or whatever, have psychic diagnosis and all that shit, that they should start to collect insects, because it's the same effect as eating those pills. Believe me,
Yeah.
You should try it, because you have the diagnosis of half of you. And collecting. I have written essays about the psychopathology of collecting, because normally people say that the collectors are crazy. But it's the opposite. We are the one who can stand life without going crazy, because we collect flies.
How many flies do you have in your collection?
Well, there are around 210 species and thousands of specimens. And as I said, they're only from this tiny island. And they are on display in my house on the island. The reason why is back in 2009, they were exhibited at the Biennale in Venice as a piece of art. You know, the art world is crazy, and some of those curators, they spotted my fly collecting and said, well, this is a piece of art. So no artist ever have had so many signed pieces of art in Venice, because on every pin there is a small label with my name on it. So, but unfortunately, no one bought it. Yeah, well,
You wouldn't sell it.
yeah, of course I would, because when they decided to exhibit my thousands of hoverflies from my island in Venice, they called from Venice and said, well, what is the insurance value? Insurance value? I've never heard about anyone taking an insurance on fly collections, but I called a friend in an art museum in Stockholm and asked him, and he said, well, say 200,000 euro. Okay. And they were perfectly all right with that in Venice. And then I hope that the truck transporting it would explode in Autobahn, or they might show up some very rich Japanese art collectors buying it. But it didn't happen, so it's still on sale if anyone has too much money.
And all the specimens are different? One from...
Yes, one fly on one little needle. I use needles from Czechia. Those are they're Austrian and Czech. The Czech, they make those needles in Prague. Wonderful needles. So it's one specimen on one needle. But you know, some of those species you can recognize them on distance, but there are some genuses, they're very close, the species are so close, so you have to look at them under your microscope. And then you collect hundreds of specimens. And one day there is a new species.
When we were talking backstage, you were saying the book is also about setting limits.
Yeah, that was actually my idea from the beginning,
Yeah.
to write about limits and limitations.
Yeah.
Because I live on an island, I'm this island kind of guy. I love islands because they are limited. For me, the world is too big. And I know many entomologists, for example, those men collecting butterflies. And they try to find all the species in Sweden. Sweden is a big country. And they are cruising around in you know, those rusty Volkswagen vans all over the country every summer, looking for the last few species they don't have. Their wives have left them since long, and they are, you know, nerdy. Mm-hmm. And for me, that wasn't an option. I wanted to collect, of course, I needed to collect insects, but I choose a small family of flies, hoverflies, with some 300-400 species in Sweden, and this island where I lived. Mm-hmm. I don't collect insects on the mainland. So it's about limitations.
And that setting limits is a way of making the world more bearable.
Bearable is the word for it, yes. And also understandable. For me, if everyone who knows anything about insects know that they are everywhere, and you don't need more than a few square kilometers to have work for the rest of your life. So the island is like a representation of the world for me. Of course, now I travel to places like this, but I don't look at the insects here. It would be too much. I had an idea once that to collect one genus of very spectacular hoverflies. I think there are a dozen species all over the world, and only collect these, and they are extremely rare. Some of them are known in one specimen. Right. That was nice. If you want to collect all over the world, you should collect one, or maybe only one species that no one have seen since 100 years. That would be a collection. Because a collection with nothing in it is also a collection, in a way. So yeah, I need this kind of limits.
What's more important to a collector like you? It's the actual item or the story around it?
Yes. Yes, that's a tricky question. Collecting objects, if, for example, if it could be insects, but if you could collect rare books or art or something, it's then you need the object. It's fetishism in a way. But when people ask me, I say, no, I don't collect art. I collect stories because that's my job. But my stories often start with me finding something. It could be an insect, it could be a piece of art, it could actually be anything. And then in the beginning I so desperately need the object because I'm a collector. But then I can get rid of it when I got the story. But it's kind of fetishism about collecting, I'm afraid.
But you remember the moments when you got the...
Yes. And I can tell you stories about when I found the rarest hoverflies.
Yeah,
oh my God.
The rarest...
because it is very exciting moments when you have been waiting for a Calicera, for example. As you know, it's a very extremely rare genus of hoverflies living inside hollow trees.
And this Criorina...
Criorina ranunculi. It's also, when I found
you describe it like an epiphany.
Oh, yes. I caught the 5th specimen ever in Sweden, and that was my entrance fee to the hoverfly establishment.
The hoverfly high society.
Yes, the fly high society. Yeah, it's a few guys, dozen, maybe not half a dozen, really experts. And then I was one of them, and I can tell you everything about these moments when I found those ridiculous, meaningless flies. But it
was because of the rarity of the...
It was because of the rarity. Men usually, there are differences between male and female collecting habits. Men are usually collecting rare things or expensive things or things that you can brag with. Look at me. Women are normally collecting beautiful things or things that they can use. It's a general difference. So of course the rarity was very important. But this one, the Criorina, was also big and beautiful. Looked like a bumblebee. Oh my God! And I was young and very ambitious, and there it was. And then I was one in the gang. You should try it. You don't have to spend the years of your life to learn about them, because it's a small hoverflies. They are not. I don't know how many species there are in Portugal, but maybe there are slightly more. No, I don't. I think it's 300 species maybe. It takes you 2 summers to learn a lot of them, to be a collector, and to be in this tiny community. Because it's a social thing. Why are people here? It's social.
And answering to that, the question of the poem that Ricardo cited, have you discovered the purpose of life?
The purpose?
What was the poem?
Yeah, it's a poem by Ogden Nash. He said, God in his wisdom made the fly and then forgot to tell us why.
But of course, we could. When I was really young, I was a biologist, a real biologist. So of course, it's easy to say why is flies a good thing.
Yeah.
You could talk about pollination, or nowadays people talk about ecosystem services. I think it's bullshit. This is an American management lingo, but of course they are important out there. But that was not my reason to collect them to save the world. Of course, I can do that. It's a good thing to know a lot about biodiversity, because if something goes wrong in the ecosystems or in society or in the landscape, then there are a few of us who can say something is happening. That's a good thing, but that wasn't my idea. I did this because it is fun, it's relaxing, and it gave me access to tiny social circle.
Yeah, I was.
And then it's my job to write books. And very old, now dead Swedish essayist once said, if you're so stupid so you go into book writing, it's a good thing to write about something you know. What that is doesn't matter. And I had this idea when I started to write about flies.
There's a passage that I love in your book. You describe bringing a cyanide bottle to the field with the casual ease of a man of the world. I hold it out of my pocket and remark truthfully that I have in my hand enough cyanide to put the entire population of the island to sleep for good.
Yes.
In that moment with the cyanide bottle, are you a collector? Are you a performer? What was the
reason
the
for me? Well, people are.
You felt power.
People are making jokes of entomologists. They have done that since entomology was invented. And as you said, annoyed people shows up telling me this is not hoverflies, it's wasps or bees or whatever. And they get angry at me. And then I always have this little jar with the cyanide, which is the difference between boys and men's in this trade, because nowadays it's very difficult to find cyanide. I have a what do you call pusher at the university who gives it to me, and it makes an impression of very, very narrow-minded men to carry around cyanide. So it's just to shut them up.
It's maybe we should inform the audience that the cyanide is to
kill the flies. Yeah.
Yes, not people.
No. Well, yeah. What? But
that's why the line is both serious, deadly serious, and incredibly funny.
Yeah.
Because you imagine to use it in a bad way.
Yeah.
I was
take revenge on...
I was telling you backstage, Mr. Sjöberg, that I was, having read your books, I was expecting you to be nerdier. You are much cooler than I thought. You don't wear glasses and you don't look like a virgin. So I was, that's what I was expecting, but that was a disappointment.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to hear that. But do you have met many entomologists?
No, I haven't. That was my.
They are a bit odd, I could say, and they are mostly men. We don't dance after the meetings and stuff. So they are a bit odd, but I like them.
Yeah. And I didn't know that, for instance, so your book, as you said, is a lot of things, has been considered a lot of things. It's poetry in one place, it's a memoir in another, it's popular science in another, and it is like, I think there was a critic in, America said it's unclassifiable. I don't know where to shelve it. Yeah. But it is also a biography of Renee Malz.
Oh yes.
And it's like it's very surprisingly because he's like an entomologist and the inventor of the fly trap. It's amazingly it's a life of adventure.
As most people's lives are.
Well,
you could find almost anything. You know, all these guys sitting here, they have so many secrets, and they have lived such adventurous lives. That's I've learned over the years that if you go into one person, you could find anything. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, scientists are better because there is something wrong with them. They have often extreme fantasy, and they are adventurous. They are bold. They travel to Renee Malz, for example. He lived in Kamchatka for years, collecting wasps. Yeah, and then he went to Burma in the 30s with this new trap, and they are still in the Natural History Museum of Stockholm. They are still sitting sorting the catch after almost 100 years. He collected millions of insects in the jungles of Burma, and then just went home with it and said, "Fix it." So I like scientists and artists as heroes in my books, because. And he was, back in those days also, it was easier to be crazy in the academic world than it is today. I'm not sure that he would have found a place for him at the museums or institutions today, because there are not that much space for the dropouts, unfortunately. And there are quite a few dropouts among the entomologists, has always been, for some reason.
That's great. Was he the one who invented the cyanide inside the fly trap?
No, has been used long before.
Long before.
But he invented the trap.
The trap, yeah.
Yes.
With which he caught mainly a lot of things, not methodically like you, like trying to catch just one species. Mm-hmm. He was a gatherer, right?
Oh yes. The Malz trap, I think some of you knows what it is. It's an automatic tent-like trap to collect insects. And he invented that on Kamchatka because they lived in a tent. And there were lots of insects in the tent, as it always is. And one day there was a small hole up in the top, and every insect went out that way. So he constructed this trap.
Because he noticed that they would gather.
They go up towards the light, and then you put a jar with poison there, or alcohol or something. It's very effective. I have one on the island. But then the problem is that you collect too much. And I also want to say that the title of the book, The Fly Trap, is also double.
Yeah.
Because it's actually about this invention and about the joy of collecting flies, but it's also about the sad notion that collecting can be a trap itself.
Yeah.
You can be too obsessed, so you finally disappear into your own collection.
That you also fell into
into a
the
trap.
fly trap, right?
Yeah, of course, I fell into the trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you keep your sense of irony about it. The book is really funny because of that, because you, so it's both ways of seducing the audience, the reader. You seduce them with your enthusiasm, and also with your being constantly reminded that your enthusiasm is somewhat ridiculous.
Yeah, I think we entomologists, they learn that from very early on, that what they do is a bit embarrassing. You know, grown-up men running after butterflies. Come on, grow up. So then it's easy that you hide behind irony. I had some talent for that, and my readers liked it. So.
But the book is also about, slowness and contemplating and silence and noticing stuff.
Everything goes too fast in the society, if you ask me. I like to do things a bit slower. And as I said earlier, to collect hoverflies is the wait. So it's about slowness. There's a lot of mumbo-jumbo written about slowness, as you know. But this is the real thing, fly collecting. And also island life.
Yes.
I mean, as I told you backstage, there is not even a car ferry to the island. It's only a passenger boat, and there lives 300 people. We know each other more than we want to know each other, and it's a closed society in a way. But everything is slow.
300 people only in the island, and in the summer
It's between 3,000 and 4,000
in the summer.
In the summer.
Yeah.
The population density is identical with the population density of Sweden, and I think also it's the same population density in Portugal, a little bit more than 100 people per square kilometer. And in the summer, the population density on the island is between India and China. But it's still, 3,000-4,000 people on 15 square kilometers. You could squeeze in 1 million if you built like Manhattan.
Yeah.
Let's ask the audience if there is a question or someone that wants to participate in
lady.
any way. There's a microphone somewhere if someone wants to
We have a question
tell something here.
on
Okay, the microphone,
the
please.
girls on the front line.
Thank you.
Hello. Sorry. Hello, thank you. It was very interesting. I was wondering what made you choose that particular species of fly and not any other fly or any other insect?
It was a coincidence. I didn't want to collect butterflies. I did that when I was a little boy. I didn't want to collect beetles because there are too many species. I didn't want to collect dragonflies because there were too few, only 50 species. It wasn't enough. And then I had a friend in Stockholm who started to study hoverflies, and he mentioned to me that recently there is a book published in Denmark about the hoverflies of Denmark. And there's another one in England, British hoverflies. If you buy those two books, you can determine almost all the species in Sweden. So I bought the books, and then I was hooked. It could have been some other kind of flies, but it happened to be hoverflies. And as you all know, hoverflies is also very beautiful. Some of them are magnificent. So that helped. But it was a coincidence, as so much in life.
So you don't envy the butterfly collectors. There's no envy.
From the butterfly collectors, envy towards me?
No, the other way around.
No, I don't envy them. Maybe they envy me because I managed to live on it. Because now this book made it possible for me to collect whatever I want to, the fly collectors, they are stuck in their rusty Volkswagen vans with no wife. So no, I don't.
Do you keep collecting? Do you keep?
I don't collect hoverflies that much anymore for two reasons. When I wrote the book, I had been collecting very intensive for 7 years on the island, and I had almost all the species. I could spend the summer finding two or three new species. And then the second reason was when the collection went to Venice as a piece of art, I thought it was kind of a beautiful thing that I started with something that I thought was natural history, and it ended up as a piece of art. But then I wrote the book, and then I gave it away. So therefore, it wasn't. I didn't need to collect anymore.
Okay. There's another question over there.
Hello. Thank you for this very enlightening and surprising presentation. I never thought of being for 1 hour to hear about flies. So what you've described is not very different from the naturalists on the 19th century, like creating traps, catching flies, living on an island with 300 inhabitants. As you probably know, the topic of this science festival is artificial intelligence. So what do you care about artificial intelligence? And do you think that in a world where artificial intelligence is everywhere, will still there be a place for entomologists and people that live and work like you do? Thank you.
You have to help me.
The topic for this festival is artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Do you think that in a world filled with artificial intelligence, there's still a place for an entomologist?
Oh yes. Oh yes. But I think this is a fascinating field. You know, the bird watchers nowadays, they have applications in their smartphones that can determine bird songs and everything, and botanists the same. You told about Olavi Sotavalta, who could determine the species of a midget by listening to it. This is an opportunity for you guys dealing with the artificial intelligence, because you can make it much easier.
We point the smartphone.
Yeah. And of course, you always need entomologists who could say if you're right or wrong. As some, kind of gurus, but with technical solutions, I'm sure that it would be much easier to read the landscape. I can read the landscape, as I said, because I know all the species. But I think you could with AI solutions make this kind of reading much easier. And after that, the love of the landscape, because it's all about love by the end of the day. If we want this nature, you have to like it. And if you can't read it, it's only a green mess. But yeah, I'm very hopeful when it comes to AI.
Is climate change another one?
Hey, you surprised me again. I thought you were going to say I couldn't care less. So
No.
The climate change is having an impact on on your overflies or?
Oh yes, of course. The climate change is, of course, affecting the distribution of species. I've written about that a lot, not that very much in the fly trap, but in the second book. I mean, this is a trilogy.
Yeah.
Actually, in the second book, The Art of Flight, I went to the US to write about an artist, a Swedish artist who became the painter of the national parks. And then I write about the climate change, and it was 2006. And I had this idea that we have to stop to segregate nature in production landscape and in nature reserves. I think it's time to stop to create nature reserves altogether, because it's not a very old, not very good solution. So of course, if whatever you study in nature, you have to take the climate change is affecting everything. This is actually it's another discussion. My view of climate change that we might not talk about today. It's a long story. I could say that much, that I'm not that afraid that most people are. I'm very optimistic as a person, but also when it comes to how to prevent, to preserve the biodiversity on the planet. I'm not that desperate as many others are. Maybe
Okay.
it's
We would to start another conversation about it, but our time's up. And thank you very much, Fredrik Sjöberg. Obrigado, Ricardo Araújo Pereira. Obrigado a todos vocês. Recordo, o livro está ali à venda, chama-se A Arte de Colecionar Moscas e, como disse o Ricardo Araújo Pereira, de facto um livro surpreendente, é o mínimo que se pode dizer. Muito obrigado por terem vindo. Obrigado.